Got it.
Okay. Aditi, you can do it.
Right.
Yeah. Start.
Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Vasudevendra Yogendram Natva Jnanapradam Gurum Mumukshunam Hitathaya Tattva Bodho Vidiyate. Nityam Shuddham Nirabhasam Nirakaram Nanjanam Nityabodham Chidanandam Gurum Brahma Namamyaham. Sadhana Chatushya
Repeat it now.
Uh, sorry, ma'am, I can't see. It's still on Sadhana Chatushtaya.
Huh. We couldn't hear you chant at all.
Oh,
The
okay,
voice
okay.
broke. Yeah. Do it again. It's hung, I think.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Sorry.
Huh.
Sadhana Chatushtayam Kim Nitya Anitya Vastu Vivekaha Iha Mutrartha Falabhoga Viragaha Shamadhi Shataka Sampattihi Mumukshutvam Cheti. नित्य अनित्य वस्तु विवेकः कः नित्य वास्तविकं ब्रह्म तद्व्यतिरिक्तं सर्वमनित्यम् अयमेव नित्य अनित्य वस्तु विवेकः विरागः कः इह स्वर्गभोगेषु इच्छाराहित्यम् इह मुत्रार्थफलभोगविरागः समाधि साधन संपत्ति का शमोदम उपरति तितिक्षा श्रद्धा समाधानम च इति शमः कः मनोनिग्रहः दमः कः चक्षुरादि बाह्ये इंद्रिय निग्रहः उपरमः कः स्वधर्मानुष्ठानमेव तितिक्षा का शीतोष्ण सुख दुख आदि सहिष्णु सहिष्णुत्वं श्रद्धा कीदृशी गुरुवेदान्तवाक्यादिषु विश्वासः समाधानं किं चित्तैकाग्रता
Great.
Ma-
Very good. Thank you. So we'll continue from yesterday and try to once again understand Alambanam in general. First, just summarizing that part from yesterday for revision. Alambanam is a specific, directed, mental imposition as advised by the Shastra. This is in keeping with the fact that by itself, man left to himself, herself, in the state of ignorance, being ignorant of who they are, the mind automatically anyway imposes, like we saw in the case of Shobhana Adhyasa. So we are not very objective when we are perceiving the world. We cannot remain objective for long. The desires in us, the vacuum felt in us, the want of happiness pushes us to impose on whatever we perceive from the world. This is utilized by the Shastra. Already we are imposing. So all that the Shastra says is utilize this capacity that, or this faculty, or this occurrence happening, whatever, जो already हो रहा है तुम में, all you have to do is direct it in a way in which the perception is almost rewritten. The perception gets reshaped, it gets redefined, it gets reoriented. When it is done in a specific manner as the Shastra says, then it becomes Alambanam. And the specific method in which Shastra says is wherever your senses contact their objects, you simply have to impose some Daivi factor on it. Some idea of a Devata, some idea of God, some idea of Ishwar, some idea of Bhagwan, Allah, कोई भी नाम दे दो, मगर उस वस्तु को as is देखने से your own mind's tendencies to look upon that object as a source of happiness cannot be managed by yourself. If you are imposing by yourself, जो अपने आप होता है, every object will give us a hope of happiness from it. As long as the hope is there, we want to have the object. And when the hope finishes or the experience turns out to be sour, we just withdraw from it. We move away from it. We want to give it up. This is happening naturally. So our freedom from objective world, our freedom from this contact with the world, to seek happiness from it, is almost impossible because we will replace the objects. So if I give up one object, because the idea is still there with me, the idea hasn't got corrected of looking for happiness from objects, I will replace my previous object with the next object. So this cycle will continue. But if you want mental freedom from this cycle, then he says, Shastra says, imposing you are doing, just watch the content, introduce in that perception God in any form. The idea, the thought, vritti, जो ऑलरेडी सेंस कॉन्टैक्ट से एक वृत्ति बन रही है, एक इंप्रेशन बन रहा है, before this impression makes a permanent state in your mind as just an object of material worth and value and my utility and my usage and my acquisition, just before it becomes a permanent impact, plant another vritti in between, and that is God in any form. And because this association of God with the object, associate God again, as you will discover in later as we move more and more in this topic, I am skeptical always to use God. God has its own meaning. Shastra uses only two terms, Bhagwan and Ishwar. And there's a third term, Devata. These are the three terms, and when three have been almost equated to God, we have missed out a lot on the meaning and the significance why Shastra made us do this, why it was advising in a way to do this. Idea was, I'm repeating, that impositions we are anyway making. And when we make them with a want in our minds and hearts, मुझे चाहिए, मुझे खुशी चाहिए, मैं दुखी हूँ, मुझे और चाहिए, you know, that search for endlessness and happiness, that almost never ends. And so to end it, Shastra said, perceptions are forming जहां जहां तुम्हारी इच्छा चली गई है, जहां जहां perception हो रहा है, जहां जहां तुम्हें लगने लगा है कि I want this, plant a vritti deliberately. अपने आप करनी पड़ेगी आपको. Plant a vritti of Bhagwan, Devata, Ishwar. Anyone. And if you don't understand the three terms, doesn't matter. God, Allah, कोई भी, तुम्हारा अपना भगवान जिसको भी तुम मानते हो. Idea is that the minute you plant upon a perception, the thought of God, Ishwar in any form, the object ceases to become the same perception that it was before. So this example we took of a simple example, just a sculpture it can be on the left side. Coming from another culture, I may never have heard that it's a Shiva Linga. In fact, even from this, when we hear it for the first time, you don't believe God's sitting there. God isn't there. Yeah, you know, it's difficult to say Bhagwan ka sthan hai, Bhagwan hai. For thinking people, it's difficult to accept, and it is not really so. But you are converting it into. It's a mental exercise. You want freedom from the tendencies of acquiring, greed, etc. They can multiply. The vices will multiply. To manage them, to control them, they are looked upon as divine. So the minute I have done the alambanam of Shiva, immediately, with the help of flowers and bel patra and chandan and water and milk, and by the time you're finishing the whole thing, for that long, the vritti of that you held in yourself was actually not of the stone sculpture. The vritti that you introduced to yourself was Shiva, idea of Shiva. And Shiva is not a tangible object that you can acquire. So the minute you have imposed like that, this is alambana. Shastra's uniqueness, as I said yesterday, was that by converting this into alambanam, I can now make it into a karma and an upasana. Karma means Vaidika karma. Any karma which has Ishvara introduced, whether it is through Vaidika karma or like yesterday someone was asking after the class, it could be just pure yajnas. Yeah? But आप कुछ तो कर रहे हैं ना, उसमें इंट्रोड्यूस कर रहे हो आप एक आइडिया. That introduction of it, by doing this introduction, you have converted a simple perception which would have generated a vritti of maybe greed, want, or avoiding sukha prapti, dukha nivritti, some impulse it would have triggered, some sensation it would have triggered of raga dvesh. Before it happened to that level, you managed it by saying this is some object, saying this is Bhagwan. And then what happened? Does that mean that any object, I can pick up a pen and say that this is Bhagwan? Well, if you can, wonderful. Your contact with the pen will change. But it is so difficult to keep doing it on every object. So what they did was they associated some objects with some form, some deities, some devtas, so that it becomes easier and easier for mind. Idea is to establish in a vritti, which is common to creation. That this whole thing, ultimately in Vedanta, all of this will be reduced to one, Brahman. There's no name form, there are no multiples. There's nothing other than Brahman. Ye Siddhant hai. This is, when you get this, is where moksha is. But that's like, as we said, by the time you come to that, there's some evolution of your own self in the process. This aspect of doing it, dheere dheere, repetition of this alambanam exercise now makes the vritti of हर चीज में जब आलम पानी पे हुआ है, हवा में हुआ है, वरुण है, वायु है, धरती है, पृथ्वी माता है, हर चीज में तुलसी माता है, गौ माता है, so many, these are all alambanams. The minute you do that alambanam, your contact changes. The same exercise, now see in Laukik what our culture did it. When you get married, girls did. Of course, there's a debatable question. I'm not entering into that at all. This is just to say alambanam. Natural tendency has always been that women is an object of bhoga. So, women were given, after marriage, kumkum hai, mangal sutra hai, etc. Shringar, एक particular kind का हो जाता है. Different हो जाता है from the rest. Now, the minute you saw anybody having Mangal Sutra or that bindi, now she's a married woman. The minute this association formed, in those days, or just a little, can the contact for anybody who has some dharma, can the contact remain the same? The minute they see this, the same person now becomes a mata. The same person now becomes a behen. How you would call in people in our things, there were no aunts and uncles, so there were, we joke in Gujarati, everybody is a bhai and bhen, bein and bhai. Everybody was a bein and a bhai. Means so the contact changes. That is called alambanam. This alambanam is very essential for purification. as we are on qualifications, sadhana chatushtayam. The alambanam helps to withdraw the mind from all other mental sensory perceptions. Analambanam means here, in Uparama, he says your tendencies to this naturally done alambanam on objects, that tendency you are cutting off. To cut it off means now your mind is held within itself. So alambanam word I have introduced as an extra chapter, extra topic, because it explains away karma and upasanas that one did for one's chitta shuddhi, for the purification, qualification. In Uparama means this natural tendency of the mind also, I am now beginning to hold back. In its own place, I can keep mind where it is. Yes, this kind of an alambanam that I just introduced for Daivi alambanam on any object and being would also help in Uparama. Because every time I want to withdraw back the mind from its engagements, preoccupations, the best thing is to not divert it to another object. If you will replace object to object, then things are endless. Anavastha, because world is full of objects. So anavastha is a regress ad infinitum flaw. Wes it's a dosha in thinking, but objects are infinite. So you will go on multiplying your mind from one object to another object to another object to another object. It's an endless thing. Analambanam, cut away and bring back the mind to remain in its own unoccupied state. Preoccupied and relaxed, unoccupied, fresh, observant. It's not that you're putting the effort to focus. जब हम पढ़ते हैं तो खींच के mind लाओ. As children you were told to do these exercises. Concentrate. If you have Uparama, you are effortlessly concentrating. Means everything falls into the mind and only when you need it, you tap it. Otherwise, it's gone inside. That's it. Don't judge it. Don't do anything with it. This is Uparama. Now, I want to ask a question. Anyone can answer. In Shiva's idol, the way Shiva has been portrayed, what does the half-open eyes of Shiva mean? Anyone, if you want. What is the Shiva has the correct depiction is when Shiva's eyes are half open.
So
Shaivism has a different way of explaining it. Full open, closed and half open. But we are taking the half open. And what does it depict in the context in which we are talking?
I'm just guessing. I'm just going to guess. I mean, I don't know what about it, but maybe that he's present with the outside world and his inner self, maybe.
I guess it's for the eye of wisdom.
The eye of the wisdom is the third eye, this one.
Okay.
Here. That's the eye of the wisdom.
Balancing both the worlds.
Balancing both the worlds. Good. This half eye open is Uparama. Same things You put it in different ways, both of you. But if you directly see it, if you understand the concept of Uparama, Shiva here is actually saying Uparama. Half contacting, half inside means closed to the outside. Correct. Half of you means there is some part of you which is alert outside, but some part of you is withdrawn to your own self inside. This half eye open is actually that depicting what is really called Uparama. In Uparama, there's no total withdrawal. It's not that you've completely withdrawn and sat down. Not possible. So this state where you are still in contact, definitely with the senses are engaged in the world, but the mind is held in Uparama. So the mind is not pulled out with the senses. The mind is held back, and senses are actively involved in the world, but the mind is kept pulled back to its own source. Is this clear? The mind, I'll repeat this. The senses are free to move in the world, but half open eye means now the mind is held back to its own self, kept here. Only when it's needed to really transact does the mind come out. Come out means comes with the senses in contact. Otherwise, senses are roaming. आप सब देख रहे हो, सुन रहे हो, smells आ रही है, भूख लगती है, खाना खा रहे हैं, बातें हो रही हैं, जब जरूरत है तो हो रही है, etc. etc. जितना काम करना है कर रहे हैं, but mind is withdrawn to one's own self. That is half eye open. If you look at Ganesha, you find one foot is always up. He's sitting down and one foot is always up. What does this one foot up mean? Say, Uparama. While previous Shivas signifies organs of perception, Ganesha here, one foot up, is saying organs of action. What are your organs of action? Hands and feet and your speech and your organ of evacuation and your procreation. कितने हो गए? 5 हो गए. 5. 5 organs of perception, 5 organs of action. 1 foot up means there is enough action done, what is necessary. But there is no restlessness to do more. मुझे और करना है. If I do more, I'll get more. So there is restlessness in your organs of action. While in Dhamma we saw there is sense control. All senses controlled. Perception, action. That restlessness, if it is there, it pushes you. It doesn't make you quiet. The mind is always noisy. One leg up of Ganesha means I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. Swadharma Anushtan. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do and I'm refraining. I have the wisdom. Ganesha is a symbol of wisdom. I have the wisdom to understand what needs to be done and what is not to be done. I'm not overindulging in activity. I'm not overindulging in the desire to do something. I'm not indulging in it. I understand action is necessary and I have to do action. I'm not slipping into inaction. I need to do action. Action sustains the body. Action sustains the spirit of life. Actions have to be generated. What are my duties to be done? 1 foot down means I'm grounded to do that. The foot down is signifying I'm grounded to do what is to be done. I recognize I'm not dumb or sleepy. or I'm not indifferent, I'm not callous as a person, that I am uh, not even sensitive enough to understand what is my duties to do. I'm not callous, I'm not indifferent, I'm not sleepy, I'm not lazy, I'm not overlooking. This itself is what people actually think. If you come to this much also, people think that is spiritual. If you can be active, not lazy, not sleepy, that itself is spiritual. People have definitions like that. That's not spiritual, really speaking. That's a minimum asked from any person. You need to step up to be the minimum. You start the life only after that to say, okay, now whatever I have to do, I'm doing, but there is something here which I do not understand as the truth of life. I also need to do something about that. So 1 foot withdrawn means I maintain the proportion or balance in such a way that I am keeping some time or energy or freedom in the mind, where mind is left by itself unoccupied by everything that I'm doing. Some part of the day is left only for the inquiry of the truth, that's in the highest state, or at the starting point in the practices for eligibility. अपने साधना के लिए, अपनी practices के लिए. This is Uparama, where there is non-essentials are discarded voluntarily after recognizing, not based on ragadvesh, but understanding that there is my duty or not my duty. What is to be done is done. What is not to be done, however it looks to others. Mostly, if you are doing it correctly, the results can never go wrong, obviously. If you're in line with the dharmas, things don't go wrong. But 1%, if it goes wrong, or wherever things are, we don't know life, what it is, then comes the next value, which is Titiksha. So, mind control, sense control, mind withdrawal, and having done all this, you continue doing what you're supposed to do. And in that process, life has its own phases. We come to life, we have certain situations to bear through, to live through, having earned on our own. Life is a mixture of opposites. Life is only opposites. Wherever there is happiness, there will be sorrow. Wherever there is heat, there will be cold. Wherever there is honor, there is dishonor. You dvandva. Jagat is dvandva. And the jiva, the individual, is seeing himself in this dvandva. Shita, Ushna, Sukha, Adi. Sukha, Dukha, Adi. Sahishnutvam. Sahishnutvam is the state of endurance. Sehna. हिंदी में कहते हैं ना सहना, सहन करो. आजकल तो I don't know how often do you hear this word, but I know when we were children, most of the things our adults, हम कुछ भी लेके जाते उनके पास, हमारे especially our parents and their parents, our grandparents, so often we would have heard सहन कर लो. सहन was like, repeated so often that, when you were growing, and we all grew up in a free India. So, क्या सहन करो, क्यों सहन करो? The concept of freedom is क्यों सहन करो? क्यों, अगर कुछ कर सकते हो तो क्यों नहीं करो? क्यों सहन करो? And for them it was anything that was not going your way and the outcome was something else, any difficulty you were having in life, सहन कर लो, बस सहन कर लो. Sahishnutvam means the state where you are enduring. Forbearance. But enduring what? So he gives the example here. This is Tattva Bodha definition. So it's a simpler definition. It's the entry point definition, as I would say. Shita Ushna, heat and cold. Forbade heat and cold. This definition itself gives us half the problems, because especially for some of us who can't bear the heat in the summers and the cold in the winters. And the first definition would be bear the heat and the cold. So the teachers from the south say this Shankaracharya definitely was living in the north, because only north you have such extremes of heat and cold. In south, you don't have such extremes there. So this teacher is definitely one who's in Rishikesh and higher realms of Himalayas, because you have to bear the extremes is the point. Life is going to give both. There's never going to be a phase which is always going to be lasting. One phase will replace the other phase. Just as, so the example is Shita Ushna, which brings Sukh and Dukh. So it's a very beautiful example in a way, a very beautiful definition. Shita and Ushna give Sukh and Dukh respectively in their respective conditions. Like, for example, in summers, Shita gives us Sukh. Ushna gives us Dukh. Cold gives us happiness. Heat gives us unhappiness. It gives us klesha. It gives us reason to complain. Let's put it this way. It gives us a reason to complain. But in winters, the same Shita now has become a source of sorrow, is now becoming a source of complaint. And same Ushna which I was complaining about in summer, कितनी गर्मी हो रही है, उफ, कितनी गर्मी हो रही है, कितनी गर्मी हो रही है, उफ. When the summer starts and everybody starts off, uff, कितनी गर्मी हो रही है, कितनी गर्मी हो रही है, कितनी गर्मी हो रही है. And we are the generation which has seen ACs in every room, and now, of course, in our washrooms also. We are that generation. The previous generation saw the fans. The fan was enough to remove the discomfort of Ushna. Uske previous generations, much before, when there was even tall ceilings and jali wale were good enough to give them so people who had to live in huts were looking enviously at those who had jalis in their long roofed areas, and hawa wahan se chali garam upar now science made it easy for us to garam hawa expand hoke upar jati hai, so you have this ventilation, and therefore such architecture is being studied of that time, because it dealt with the same Shita and Ushna. It dealt with the same elements. The experience was what? Whether it was that time or it is this time, the experience always has been that गर्मी में गर्मी हमारा दुख का कारण है और सर्दी में गर्मी हमारा सुख का कारण है. This itself is so absurd. So while it is swabhavik, it can't change. It has not changed for decades. I mean, decades to kuch bhi nahi, for generations. It is always going to be like this for every living form. What happens to birds when it's hot? People are told now to keep water outside for them, because the sources of water we have all replenished. So people are told to keep pots of water because the birds are dying. The conditions are going to be always on extremes, or are going to be changeable. They replace each other. The Gita verse will be there, which I'll take up next time. These conditions replace one another. So if one condition is being looked upon as a source of sorrow, the same condition can be looked upon tomorrow as a source of happiness, or vice versa. जिसको हम आज आनंद कह रहे हैं, वही चीज कल हम दुख का कारण कह सकते हैं, या जिसको आज हम दुख का कारण कह रहे हैं, वही चीज को हम कल सुख का कारण मान लेंगे. The example of a parent who was praying to Bhagwan, give me a child, give me a child, did all the karmas, etc., etc., give me a child, and lo and behold, comes a child. Happy, 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 happy. Has the story ended happily? After some months, they realize the child doesn't talk. Now again, go to Bhagwan, do something, go to doctors, this child, now the same. So, पहले दुख का कारण था no child. Child. Now child is the source of happiness. But the same child not talking has now become the source of sorrow. What this definition says to us is, look at life as something which is one replaces the other. The pleasure replaces the pain replaces the pleasure. Agama painaha. Gita is going to talk in the verse. I will quote the verse next time. Yeah? Agama painaha. All sense contact based happiness and sorrow is going to be a source of what was I saying? All happiness based, all sensory based contact which is going to give us happiness or sorrow, dependency from that is going to be temporary. It's going to be very anityam if by now you've got the text. What is anityam? What is wisdom in then that experience? What is anityam? Whatever is anityam, Shastra says, bear it. Can you just excuse me? I'll just be back. Yes, me back. Whatever is the source of sorrow or pleasure, which is born from sense contact. What is important to understand is, because the contact based joy or sorrow was there, therefore understand that this is temporary. And if it is temporary, then only thing that remains wise is endure it till it passes. What it means to say is, question can always be asked here, does it mean we should not change anything? Should we not attempt progress? Should we not attempt to make things better? What is in your hands to make better? Make better. The idea of Sahishnutvam is to identify what is not in your hands and is still becoming a source of sorrow or joy. What is in your hands, definitely change. But what lands up becoming a current for sorrow to us is what generally was not in our hands and we still want a change there. Like you would say, I want someone to change for whatever reason. And that's not really in your hand to change someone. So what happens if that person is, for whatever reason, now endure. That endurance is going to give you a lot of mental shanti. Vivek Chudamani has a little better explanation of this quality. It says there in verse 25, Sahanam sarva dukkhanam. All reasons for sorrow, afflictions, दुखों का जो भी कारण हो, sahanam, bear it, endure it. Apratipurvakam. And many teachers have given different explanations for this or translations of this. Apratipurvakam means, I am writing here particularly, without resistance, to alter it. Or further this author says, Chinta vilapa rahitam, without much worry or anxiety. Chinta ke bina. And vilap is a very beautiful word. English में कभी कभी spirit नहीं पकड़ा जाता. Anxiety में vilap is जब आप काए verbal, there is a verbal diarrhea of complaint. Goes on. You keep complaining about the same thing over and over. So the anxiety of that condition or situation is so much that it goes on. It goes on. चलता रहता है. The voice doesn't stop. It goes on complaining. He says actual titiksha is what? So just endurance is not titiksha. Because when you endure, then you may hold in your mind grudges, you hold hurts, you hold memories, unpleasant are more held, so all that keeps happening in the mind. But actual titiksha is where there is forbearance in the manner in which there is no resistance, complete acceptance. It's a complete acceptance of the situation. It is a complete acceptance of things as they are. There is no resistance in the mind to accept what has come to you specifically. And there, in every life, there will be some occasions or some things that come like that. Suddenly, your most loved person or the one on whom you were dependent on, or somebody, friend, partner, whoever, suddenly out of the blue, something happens. Now, it's a situation that is a reason for affliction. But we compound the affliction by non-acceptance of it. We resist the situation. So he says titiksha is actually such a practical quality. All these, I think, are only practical because they're dealing with the practical world. But they qualify you for the truth and peace in yourself. So that you can accept things, situations as they are and bear it up without having the desire to change too much. Change what you can is because we are all living in the world. But if you look at Vedanta from the third drishti that I often say is the sannyasi drishti or the real qualified person, usko to kaha jayega, kuch badalne ki zarurat hi nahi hai. Just bear what comes to you. Whatever has come to you, just put up with it, bear it, knowing fully well that everything comes to us, born from us. What is mine alone comes to me. Sukh and dukh. कोई भी कारण बन के आता है, कुछ भी कारण बन के आता है जो सुख या दुख का कारण बन के आया है, that is what is mine has come to me. Therefore, let me just live through it. Many people advocate some karmas for it. So there's a category of karma like prayashchit karma. Ye kar lo, wo kar lo. Itne logo ko. This titiksha really means I don't want to change it. I don't want to bribe the forces. It's fine, doesn't matter. I just have to put up. I know it's difficult. It may be unbearable. But if it was so unbearable, nature cannot give you anything. Whatever falls in life as pain and pleasure is something that is already in the capacity. So those people who understand this value in the truest sense, they can magnify the practice up to that point. From simple things to up to that point, because titiksha means just letting things come, letting them go, not holding on to them, not avoiding them, without worry, without verbal entanglements, without all that. Simply bear it. And when you bear it, one of the teachers would say, do it with cheer. Endure with cheer. There is a cheerful endurance, not a morose endurance, not a I only have to do it, maybe you don't, and then after 10 years it comes out, I had to do it. So for all of us it happens. However much we may think we are qualified with it, kabhi na kabhi to moment of weakness aata hai. Why? Because we lack titiksha. As I often say, these are certain qualities. If I really get time, I've always wanted to work more on these qualities. But just as a yardstick and a measure, always keep the qualities from the scale of 0 to 10. 0 is I have none of it. 10 is I am a master of it. All of us will be between this number. Our titiksha will be whatever number we give to ourselves. How much we know how we get disturbed by changes and afflictions and things like that. How much can I bear? I know there was an example once put to us where a person, the minute they wake up in the afternoon, they had to drink water. And there are two qualities in this example. There is a quality of Uparama here, lack of Uparama, and there is a quality of lack of Titiksha in this example. The person, the minute they wake up, is so thirsty. But one time, they were traveling somewhere. So, when they woke up in the afternoon, there was no water immediately. The example that is there is to say, the person was so agitated, so disturbed, that they had to stop the journey somewhere, take a detour to get a bottle of water. And it was a long detour because that journey, something like this, whatever the details be, immaterial. Point is, that particular day, yes, your body's got accustomed to water when you wake up. But that particular day, you were traveling. You did not have water with you. Yet, you could not control the urge there, which was making you restless because of your habit of constant same consumption. You could not control it. You could not hold the mind within itself. So the mind kept getting more and more disturbed. And because you could not endure the thirst, you made a hue and cry of the situation to such an extent that everybody involved in the trip had to be bifurcated somewhere else, for a glass of water. Example may look absurd, but we all have these weaknesses as we recognize them. And so, in this situation, between 0 and 10, what would be the capacity? If this is the yardstick, and these are only average, they don't have to mean judgment. It's just a reminder. If I see such a thing in myself, then I recognize that I need a lot of practice. I'll need a lot means not like, I just need practice so that I have some degree of titiksha, because life can throw any situation to anyone at any time. I will have some need to develop control over myself for the sake of my own being. I'm not doing a favor to anybody in the world. For my own being, my mind needs to be under my control, for which instances like this example reveal to me how much do I have forbearance or not. And it doesn't mean every situation you need to be bearing up. Certain things need to be changed, you change them. Certain things, well, these are very subjective things. As long as you have chosen, through all the situations, you have chosen to strengthen the value. Sometimes you may have to, yes, change it. Sometimes you don't have to be hard and fast every time you have to do it. No, as long as you have come 5, 4, 5, 6, up to that point, if you have come out of 10, you are you have got some relative peace of mind. It is only for that. If you already have relative peace of mind, fantastic. That is all the point of endurances. Why this definition of Vivek Chudamani is important is because in the previous definition, he is only saying forbear the pairs of opposites. But when you forbear the pairs of opposites, honor, dishonors, that means when I'm given this, I was not aware of, I'm not too much of a movie, okay, let me say I was not in that sense of having movie idols and, so I was not very informed about actors, actresses up to a point. I read the story of Rajesh Khanna after he died, somewhere. Till then, he's a superstar, he's a superstar. But when I read the story, it hit very hard to say that he's enjoyed the highest state of honor. In his times, he was the first superstar, as in a superstar. The world will never know, India will never know that kind of a superstardom. No, everybody says that. I mean, there are many after that, but not that kind that he enjoyed. And the minute it fell, his last days, even today, that article that I read gives me hair on my end, goosebumps. They give me goosebumps, because was he not the same person when he had the honor? Because that honor was so rare at that time that when it fell, he treated it like dishonor. He was deeply hurt as a person. Now, rising tide, waning tide, success, failure, prosperity, losing it, poverty, health, ill health, friends, loss of friends, harmony, disharmony. What more can there be? All things belong to the same category, which is one word, mithya world. So whatever belongs here is going to be anityam. Therefore, when things are fallen into your, it's like when there was so much of honor going on, you had to be careful that your mind did not latch on to it as your success. You had to keep the two separate. In your mind, that exercise should have been done. If that exercise, like they do now the present generation people have this habit. So all sportsmen understand this, that their good times are coming and then the life is going to be theirs. A lot of cricketers I know now, once they retire, they know. So they don't delude themselves so much anymore, I think so. There's a lot more information now. But idea is, you are not to associate yourself with your losses and gains. with your riches and etc., with your followings and your lack or whatever, fame, ill fame, सब कुछ आएगा जीवन में, थोड़ा थोड़ा सब सब. It's like, taste it and you'll get the taste of many things in life. So endurance of it without making them as problems, making them as huge issues, magnifying it to become as a unsolvable problem. Nature never has a problem. If we are perceiving a problem, it is our desires there. And therefore, wisdom lies only in solving it from the level of our own self. And when you correct it here within yourself, you realize the external gets sorted on its own. So Titiksha is the next best and a very favorable quality to everybody. All the Shamadhi, Shataka, Sampatti, they strengthen the Vairagya and the Viveka. They are like limbs. I was trying to make a flow chart, but I couldn't draw it. I'm not so good with all this, but I tried, spend some time. I couldn't make it, so I'm just conveying it, So it's like, I can draw it later, but next time maybe. So Viveka and Vairagya become the important parts of your own development. To strengthen Vairagyam and Viveka are these 6 qualities. When these are strong in a person, you will realize the person has Viveka and Vairagya very well established. Vairagya se zyada Vivek. Vivek is already established in the person. So if these 6 are weak in the person, if you're not good, like if I said, if your Titiksha is at 0, zero to nahi hoga shayad, hopefully, ho bhi sakta hai. I can almost imagine 2-3 people saying, oh, but I have 0.1%. I only have that much endurance. Or somebody will, if you have to put a mark, somebody had put their mark on 9 and then somebody gave them an experience completely opposite. The way they fell, then suddenly 9 can't, if your 9 was your endurance capacity, the situation couldn't have toppled you so much. So a lot of situations of life are dealt differently when there are these strengths in a person. So these 6-fold things, no textbook will teach you all this. Nobody teaches as in teaches. Why teaches? Because it's not that it needs to be taught like a text. These are the things that build you from inside. They are the ones that make you the person. This person is the one who deals with life, who lives the life. So what material you have here is the way you contact the world. So a lot of things happen from outside, but how you deal with them will be how you have within you, what you have within you. So these 6 qualities really, really help to strengthen the overall you. With this, I will end the class. Once again, I think you want to chant, Aditi? Yeah.
You said you would talk about the 3 levels of achieving Uparama. Like you were going to talk about the levels. The first level was be disciplined. The second level was to remove interest. And the third level was sannyas. You had mentioned in the last class you would talk about it.
Right. Oh.
If you could just give like a 5. Okay, fine. No problem. Yeah.
Because I think sannyasa I meant in the whole course. So I'll have to rebuild the whole thought flow again.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll come back next class. Okay. Great. Okay. You want to do the chanting of Sarve Sam? You'll do it yourself? Or should I repeat it?
Yeah, I can follow you.
Can? Oh, follow. Okay. Om Sarvesham Swastir
Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu.
Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu. I think.
Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu. Hello.
let's do Sarve Bhavantu.
But we can do this, ma'am. We can do this.
Okay. You can do it?
No, I'll follow you.
Okay. Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah.
Sarve bhavantu sukhinah.
Sarve Santu Niramaya.
Sarve, sorry.
Sarve Santu Niramaya.
Sarve santu niramaya.
Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu.
Sarve bhadrani pashyantu.
Ma Kaschit Dukha Bhag Bhavet.
Ma kascha dukha bhargave.
Bhag Bhavet.
Bhagave.
Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah.
Sarve bhavantu sukhinah.
Sarve Santu Niramaya.
Sarve santu niramaya.
Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu.
Sarve bhadrani pashyantu.
Ma Kaschit Dukha Bhag Bhavet.
Ma kascha dukha bhagave.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
The broadcast of Facebook Live has